accelerating growth, blockchain integration, DAOs, and Fintech processes.
Hello everyone, welcome to our panel on the AIBC America Summit. And in this panel, we'll be discussing the growth and adoption of blockchain technology, its integration, and also the progress we've seen in relation to DAOs and Fintech in general. I'm joined today by some excellent panelists, and I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Jonathan Galea, I'll be your moderator for today's panel. I am the CEO of BCA Solutions, which is a regulatory and technical advisory firm with offices in Malta, Liechtenstein, and Singapore. Simply put, we offer licensing and regulatory services in those three jurisdictions to exchanges, brokers, and service providers, and we also offer regulatory and strategic advice to public authorities and governments. And now I'll let our panelists introduce themselves and we'll kick off today's discussion. Gabriel, if you could do us the honors, and we'll proceed with you first.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan, for the invite. So I'm Gabriel Zanki. I'm founder of Mobileyourlife, which is an investment banking. We raise capital for tech, including blockchain, and more recently also renewable energy, cannabis. And also from my side, I've been advising and investing in some of the companies we get to help. Currently based in Colombia, and yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you. David?
My name is David Orban. I am the founder and managing partner of Network Society Ventures, part of the Network Society Group. We are longtime believers in the power of decentralization that compounded with the exponential technologies that we see around allows disruptive business models to be experimented with and great investment opportunities as well. We see blockchain as just one of many industrial sectors going in the same direction through this.
Thank you, David. Rosine?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm the founder and CEO of the Blockchain Academy, which is an educational project and advisory company also focused on crypto, blockchain. Generally, we launched our services in Brazil in 2016. And we also have experience as being advisors to authorities, and as just like you, Jonathan, here, and somehow working on creating and promoting the local ecosystem as well. Happy to have you all here and looking forward to our discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. And in fact, again, we'll be discussing the growth and adoption in terms of blockchain technology and its various different facets as well. And speaking of blockchain technology, again, blockchain technology, as let's say, as opposed to common thinking, was not born thanks to Bitcoin, but the concept of blockchain, of course, was before that. And I would say that, however, blockchain technology in its practical sense has really and truly been with us thanks to Bitcoin, which again had its genesis block mined in January of 2009. So it's been more than 11 years since we saw, let's say, the advent of Bitcoin. And I would say that 11 years have passed, but still, really and truly, we mostly talk about cryptocurrencies when we, let's say, talk about users of blockchain technology. And are we still in an age where crypto seems to be the main use case of blockchain technology? Or are we seeing some other emerging uses which do merit their own attention as well? Perhaps let's start off with you, Rosine, with this first question.
Sure. Well, it is my understanding that we are still in this moment where cryptos are still the main topic for discussion. So starting from Bitcoin, it's the first type of money which is global, supranational. It's working, it's liquid. So I believe it's the first relevant use case of involved in all this discussion. We could also mention the stable coins. And I think all of that together is deeply changing and disrupting the financial market. But also in parallel, we're starting to see some evolution in what we call blockchain for other purposes. I believe that people are understanding the potential, starting to innovate. And then I believe that in the short, medium term, we could have some disruptions as well, as long as regulatory discussions evolve together. That's my understanding.
Great, thank you. David?
We are right to be impatient because there are a lot of challenges in the world that technology needs to address and help us solving. But imagine that we are in the maybe mid-70s, and the four of us, as well as the people listening, are aware that the ARPANET exists. And we are equally impatient because it still hasn't changed the world. But there will be still another 20 years to go before the successor of the ARPANET, the internet, as we know it today, is just starting to become something that more than the specialists are familiar with. And it will be another 20 years after that when everybody understands that the end of the internet is indeed changing the world. So will it take 50 years before blockchain has changed the world? I hope not. But only if we are persistent and if we keep our eyes on the long-term mission, we will be able to deliver on the promise of the original dreams of those who created and architected blockchain. And the intermediate applications are all good and fine, but we have to aim for radical disruption.
Very valid points. Thanks, David. What about you, Gabriel? What's your take on this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Jonathan. And I would say definitely Bitcoin obviously brought, a stage of innovation back then, like, the 0 to 1 that Peter Thiel talks in his book about the innovation. You always have to innovate, scaling, right? One level. So I believe Bitcoin brought us to all this fascinating world, but still, as you say, I would say purely cryptocurrencies right now that are kind of like dominating the space. But first, with Bitcoin, is like the commodity, the gold 2.0, as they say, but then you see how Ethereum also emerged as a platform to create smart contract companies and dApps, right? But it's still too early, and now we've seen this recent DeFi revolution, which is basically bringing financial products, traditional financial products, to decentralized. So, I mean, for sure, I think it's going to continue, and the system is changing to more decentralized networks in a way, although still very centralized. Still, Bitcoin is quite centralized, stable coins, but you will see examples that will bring more decentralization. So yeah, I believe it's still cryptocurrencies the main, theme, made the more important right now, but for sure will change down the line. But it's the long-term play.
Yeah, but you mentioned, again, various projects like Bitcoin, Ethereum, even some recent DeFi projects, most of them being built on Ethereum as well. And I would say that, again, that shows that there's been a bit of a, let's say, change in terms of how we see blockchain network, permissionless blockchain networks, whereby, again, we saw Bitcoin's main use being that of, let's say, hosting a currency, which is intended to be used as a means of payment or store of value, depending on your point of view. We've seen Ethereum, which again advocates the use of smart contracts, and then we saw the whole DeFi movement kicking off. But the commonality, let's say the common point between all these different networks is that they have a tokenized model which serves as an incentive. And now we started seeing, let's say, the emergence of blockchain networks which do away with this tokenized model because they don't need an incentive as they are permissioned networks. I'm talking about enterprise blockchains here, and we're seeing an interest in these, let's say, so-called enterprise blockchain platforms. What's your take on this? And as in, is it something which you see potential in? Do you think it's a gimmick? Do you think it's just a passing trend? What's your take on this? We'll start off with, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I understand lots of people underestimate this type of project because, of course, if we compare the immediate deliverables, they are very much far from what we are seeing in the financial market by now. But I'm confident that in the medium term, when, as David was mentioning at the beginning, when a blockchain encounters other technologies and new disruptive models are created based always on legal endorsement, I believe we start to feel more disruption in the way we change not only information but generally based on the idea that tokens represent things, they represent rights and any other thing that we can imagine.
Thank you. Very valid inputs. Gabriel, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. To be honest, with this enterprise blockchain, I mean, when all this movement started, I got excited about the decentralized component, right? You don't have to depend on a third party or government or central company, right? So when appears the blockchain, the enterprise blockchain, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan, or I not that I got disappointed, but it was not the thing I was waiting for. I'm waiting for more decentralized plays, right? Or let's say Ethereum 2.0, what will happen with them, right? So, I mean, not that it won't work the solution, but I think it's not the main objective of the blockchain, right?
Okay, so we have a differing opinion over here. What about you, David? Are you on one side or the other?
The competitive advantage of corporations derives still a lot from traditional analysis, like Porter's view of a very linear organization. But today we have already seen, even without blockchain, that platforms such as Facebook and Google and others are able to capture an enormous value in different, more network-like systems. So as long as a blockchain-based enterprise is able to prove that it is superior and probably most importantly more resilient in the dynamic adjustments that it needs to implement as its environment evolves, then absolutely those experiments should be carried out. But it should not be done in order to replicate in a more expensive infrastructure the existing solutions which work absolutely fine without blockchain too.
Yes, and in fact, on that point, I would say that, again, there have been some implementations making use of, again, notable permissioned blockchain systems like Hyperledger, whereby let's say the use case itself was not quite strong. And in fact, it only leads to certain inefficiencies when compared to other systems which have been with us for longer and might serve the purpose better. So I would say that in terms of, let's say, analyzing and let's say considering the use of enterprise blockchains, one should always keep in mind certain common factors which are applicable across the board, whether it's the use of permissioned or permissionless blockchains, by asking certain questions like, for example, are we talking about having a blockchain-based system being implemented in an environment where there is a lack of trust? And if there is this lack of trust, would, let's say, a potentially automated system be the solution for this as well? Because ultimately, if you were to use an enterprise blockchain solution just for the sake of, for example, recording certain data inputs, then maybe the answer is not making use of blockchain technology at all, but potentially might be making use of certain legacy systems which can work better. I don't know whether I'm sharing your sentiment on this, David, Rosine, or whether you have a diverging take on this.
Yeah, what I can say just to add quickly is that, for example, Facebook, the Libra coin, maybe they are not crypto in the sense of they're open, decentralized, but the positive thing is that they could bring a lot of usage. I mean, a lot of users will pay attention to this movement in a way, although it's not purely decentralized or crypto related. But at the end, that's the thing that is lacking the crypto market, a real usage. So maybe a positive side on that, on the corporations, is that they will bring more attention and attention to the space. No?
Please.
What I was gonna say is I'm in line with David in his view that if we try to use blockchain for the existing models, it probably makes no sense. But if we are aiming at new types of models, then blockchain could be very much interesting. And all the environment is not ready yet. So we have a lot of marketing today, but we could have a lot of value in the short term. That's my point, and I believe David is in line with me when he speaks.
In fact, speaking about apprehension on part of the regulators, and again, a project which Gabriel mentioned as well, the Libra project. And it's a project which I would say goes at odds in terms of, let's say, what we typically expect of cryptocurrencies, and in that it is a centralized project led, of course, by one of the largest corporations in the world. However, we have seen, of course, the introduction of certain decentralized movements and ideas, one of them being the concept of a decentralized autonomous organization, the DAO. Speaking of the DAO, we know that the first DAO to come to existence didn't have, let's say, such a happy ending, in the sense that we know what happened in the DAO incident back in 2014 and 2015, whereby basically there was, of course, the DAO incident, which led to a hard fork in the Ethereum network. And from that year onwards, from the DAO incident onwards, have we seen any, let's say, change in the way that we perceive DAOs? Do you think there's any future in DAOs? And this will be our last question for the panel. So we'll just go for, let's say, a brief, opinion in terms of what do you think about the current situation of DAOs in general. Let's start off with David this time round.
You can see the wars card. I invested in the DAO.
Ooh,
and I proudly displayed these scars because, as any investor knows, those experiments are essential. We cannot pretend finding scalable solutions unless we make mistakes too.
True.
The double entry bookkeeping system has been invented 500 years ago when we needed pencil and paper in order to balance our books. A new organization is very natural for a new kind of technology, and those that are able to implement governance systems aided by mathematics, the correct balance, the needs of a multitude of stakeholders are going to thrive for the next 500 years, driving possibilities that we can barely glimpse today, whether they are going to be autonomous car swarms in the form of completely different shapes than we see today in IoT networks, or it is going to be robots extracting precious metals from the asteroid belt. We don't have to restrict ourselves to existing examples of why a new organization under a new governance system should be extremely advantageous.
We just have time for two very last brief comments. Rosine, Gabriel, let's
well, I totally agree with David. So, and also I have some more scars too from the DAO. I had invested on Ethereum by then, and then I lost part of my money. So, and I agree that we are not envisaging yet what could come from that, but it's very promising in my perspective, considering that we are more and more digital, and then that tokens and this type of infrastructures could represent more things and rights generally.
That is true. Gabriel, your concluding comment?
Yeah, just to add to the comments, I've been paying attention recently to MakerDAO and the DAI, which is a stable coin that is backed by a pledge by crypto, right, on Ether. And I mean, for me, that's very fascinating. It could be very interesting, but it's still high risk because if there is a software bug, then you could lose all your money again and repeat the same scenario. But definitely will be some type of movement like that, that would be very interesting, especially on the stablecoin side.
Definitely.
So, yeah,
Mentioning stablecoins, I think if we managed to pin down the concept of algorithmic stablecoins and pair them with a functioning DAO, I think we'll actually start seeing something very interesting happening in this space. Dear panelists, it's been a pleasure hosting and moderating this panel. Thank you a lot for your insights, and I look forward to connecting with you right after the panel. Dear audience, thanks a lot for listening in. Hope you found this panel insightful, and we'll see you with the next panel. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.